Welcome to the Career Slay podcast, the show where we talk about career growth, courageous leadership, and life-work alignment. I'm your host, Kelly Pokes-Burke, and I'm here to help you achieve sustainable success and slay the fear in career. Barbara Boselli is a leadership expert, speaker, and executive coach with over 15 years of experience leading and developing teams at Fortune 500 companies, including Google. She helps professionals and organizations thrive by integrating emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and neuroscience into leadership development. Barbara holds an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, certifications from the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute and unpack, and a degree in spiritual psychology. Her work focuses on building self-awareness, resilience, and the kind of leadership that inspires trust and drives performance. Based in Westport, Connecticut, Barbara lives with her husband and 2 sons. She finds joy in meaningful conversations and discovering new places through travel. Welcome to Career Slay, Barbara.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
I'm really excited to have you. We met at a speaker program called Heroic and have spent the past 10 months creating keynote speeches, which we hope will change the world. How's that going for you?
It's going. It's still in development. I think it always will be, but it's going well.
We'll talk more about what you speak about, but let's start from the very beginning. Tell me a little bit more about what you were like as a kid. What was your childhood like, and what was the family dynamic?
So I grew up in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I was there until my late 20s and grew up in a middle-class family. My parents divorced when I was very little. So I lived with my mom mostly and my 2 older sisters, but my father was still very present in our lives and had a very happy childhood, always local there. Then went to college in Brazil. When I was kind of deciding what to do for college, I kind of took the path that I thought was going to be the most convenient, I guess. My father was a businessman. I always, it was easy for me to do project management, and I was really good with numbers and all that. So I decided to study business, and went to kind of have a career in large organizations there. And then I eventually moved to the US to get an MBA. So that's how I ended up here.
Wow, that's incredible. So being born and raised in Brazil, what was your experience like transitioning to the United States?
Well, it's definitely very different. And I remember when I started my MBA, they had a week of orientation for the international students. And it was really funny because there was something and there were people from Brazil, from China, from India, from all different Europe, so all different cultures. And they were talking about how the cultural differences, and some things that really stuck with me that they talked about was, in the US, when you're talking with someone, you always keep at least 1 arm length distance between you and the other person. And also, when you're in an elevator with people, you don't look at them. You just look at the door. That's what they taught us. It was really funny because, of course, coming from Latin America, it's different. And I imagine, and also they, of course, talked a lot about how in the US is totally appropriate and even encouraged for you to kind of market yourself, talk about yourself, which for countries like China, for example, it might be really against the norm. So it was really interesting to go through that. And of course, I still to this day sometimes face challenges that are related to culture.
That's so interesting, just the nuances. And I love the story about the elevator and the arm. So to take a step back, if we can think about the beginning of your career, what was that first job that you got out of college in the business world?
Yeah. Well, my first job was, it probably was at L'Oréal, where I started as an intern and I worked in their kind of finance department. And it was a great experience. I was given a lot of responsibility and I got to understand how a company works, right? The structure of a company, how to interact with people at work. And they had a very unique culture because it's a French company. But it was a great first step. And then from there, I went to I think after that, that's when I went to work for Vale, which is where I had my major work experience in Brazil. Vale is a mining company, and it's one of the largest companies in Brazil. I did investor relations, so I got to interact with people from the outside world, from banks and investors. It was great.
So, what was it that, it sounds like you got some amazing global experience. What was it about the MBA that really prompted you to make that pivot and make that change?
There was a personal component and a professional component. From a professional standpoint, I had been working in finance for many years and I wanted to try something different. And I felt the MBA was a great way to make a career shift. A lot of people use an MBA like that. Also, it would give me exposure to, studying in the US, which is totally different than studying in Brazil. And then from a personal standpoint, I also wanted to have that experience of living abroad and just kind of expanding my horizons.
That's amazing. What did you end up doing after you got out of the MBA program?
So I went to work for Google. I did my internship there during my MBA, and then they hired me full time. So I moved from Chicago, where I was at the time, to California, to the Bay Area. And I worked in their strategy and operations team. So I started managing a team and that was like really fun to do. It's what I ended up realizing that's what I most loved about my job was this aspect of people development and human development in general. And Google was an amazing company to work for. It not only had all the perks that probably most people have heard about, but just I was surrounded by like really smart, amazing people. And I was reading in the papers about the people I was working with. So it was a terrific experience.
If somebody doesn't know what strategy and operations is, can you kind of explain what that would look like on a day to day, like what types of projects you'd be working on?
Yeah. At Google, the way Google makes money, or at least at the time, and it still is, it makes money through advertisement, right? And so there's a whole sales team that's working with the advertisers to, have them book their spots on Google, etc. My team was in charge of giving the support that the sales team needed. So we did everything from figuring out which clients to go to, how to segment the clients and things like that, to more the operations, which actually the part that I personally worked more was the operations. One thing we were in charge of was the company had its CRM system, which is the customer relationship management system. My team was in charge of working with the engineers to develop this system. So understand, how can we best equip the sales team with information and a workflow that will help them support the advertisers that they were working with.
So you worked in strategy and operations, and did you do any other types of roles within the organization? Because I know Google is, people who stay at Google tend to work in different job functions across their career.
Yeah, so I stayed in the overall same area, but within the area, I did different roles. So there was a time, actually, when I just started, I had a role called product specialist, which was we were the bridge between the customer, so the advertisers, and the product managers who developed the products that the advertisers used. And we would understand what were their needs and then translate that to the product team so that the product would keep evolving in the direction of what the client needed.
So what kind of lit this fire to start working more on like people development? I know you had mentioned that that's what you were really passionate about and it kind of became the next step in your career. Tell us more about how you moved into that.
So I always had a lot of interest in human development, and starting with my own development, I've you know since before Google, I've always invested in my own personal development. And funny story, when I was getting my MBA at that time, which was like almost 20 years ago now, um, mindfulness and meditation were really like woo woo. It still is a little bit, but at
Yeah.
that time was like you didn't talk about that in the business world.
Hmm.
And I remember that I was already into it and loved meditation and mindfulness, and I signed up to meditation training in the town Evanston where I was, but I did not tell anybody from school. So I would just kind of disappear in the afternoon and go to my meditation training because it was so like out of context, right? These days, I think even there are a lot of MBAs that talk about mindfulness and they teach that, but at the time it wasn't the case. So, anyways, I've always been very interested in human development. And then at Google, I was managing a team and I loved that. I really invested time and energy in getting better as a manager. And I ended up taking a role as an internal career coach at Google. It's like a voluntary job you can take on top of your day-to-day job. And you help um, coach Google employees that are looking to change areas or to relocate or kind of trying to figure out their next steps. And I took a training called Search Inside Yourself, and this training was developed by Googlers and delivered only internally at the time. And it was an emotional intelligence training, leadership training,
Hmm.
but founded in mindfulness and all backed up by neuroscience. And this training for me was very transformational. I remember that it was really the first time in my life that I kind of really realized that all the leadership skills that I really admired in people, some of which I had, some of which I didn't have, that they could be taught and learned. Up
Hmm.
until that point, I felt like, either you were a natural born leader or you weren't. But that's when I really learned that all those emotional intelligence skills, they can be learned, that our brain keeps evolving throughout our lives so we can retain it to, respond to situations in different ways. We can create self-awareness, all those things. And during that training, I remember sitting there and looking at the teacher, the facilitator, and thinking to myself, in my next life, I would love to be that person. But it was so like far away from my reality that I didn't even consider the possibility that this could happen in this life.
Wow.
But then, sometime after that, I ended up leaving Google. I was pregnant with my second son. My first son was 2 years old. And there were a lot of different factors that kind of make that move to leave. It was really, really hard to leave Google.
Hmm.
It was a stable job. I had a good role. I was getting, a good salary. And really like my identity was very much tied to being a working professional and working for Google. But then I decided to leave and just be a mom for a while. I mean, not just like focus
Yeah.
on being a mom, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And and I was really lost, to be honest. I had no idea what I wanted to do next. I took some time, and during that time, I decided to take a training called a training in spiritual psychology at the University of Santa Monica.
Hmm.
And that training, when I took it, was really for my own personal development. I never, in my wildest dream, thought that I would add that training to my resume.
Can you explain what is spiritual psychology and how to use that in your consulting?
The basic idea is that we all have our goal line, which is what's happening in the physical world. And things. And, how do we grow in our goal life? We get a promotion, we travel, we build a family, whatever it is that we want to accomplish in this realm here. But then there's also the soul line, which is really our consciousness. And if we're kind of stuck in our soul line, everything that happens in the goal line isn't really appreciated as much. We can be happy for a moment when you get a promotion, but before we know it, we're already looking at the next promotion. Or, we buy the house, we're very happy, but then we look, the neighbor has the pool. Oh, now I want the pool. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all want to grow and get more in the physical world. But the soul line, which is, they call it the spiritual world, the consciousness, is where you grow in a way that you start understanding that everything is really inside of us. And as we grow internally, we grow our consciousness, our understanding, we are able to really, it comes down to love, right? Love ourselves, love others. Then whatever happens in this goal line is less important, because we are able to stay more in a state of equanimity, that we're not as impacted, right? And the way to do that is by just being more aware of ourselves and letting go of stories that tell us that our worth comes from what we achieve, that, knowing that we each have our own value and that we are here in this world to learn that Earth is a school in the end of the day, and we're all here to learn, and everything that happens is for our growth and our development, that life is happening for us, not against us. If we're able to see that, we can take ownership for how we relate to life, so we can see the opportunities, we can see the challenges as opportunities. So it's kind of like this different way of relating to life. That's what we learn in this training. And they give us like very specific tools and concepts that we can implement and practice to become more conscious and able to do that.
Wow, that is fascinating. I want that. And I was also definitely the person who wanted the pool.
I mean, me too. But and it's a process, right? Of course. And there's nothing wrong with wanting the pool. It's great to have a pool. It's just that if your life becomes about having a pool, either I have a pool, I'm happy. If I don't have a pool, I'm miserable. Then that becomes a problem.
Got it.
I was learning about human skills, like how to listen to people, how to take responsibility for your life, for how you respond to situations. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. And I want to bring this to companies. But I had no idea how to do it. I was kind of trying different things. And for a while I was very stuck, thinking that I needed to have the whole plan. So I could, for me to start something, I need to know where that was going to lead. And then I learned that search inside yourself training that I had taken had actually spun off from Google. It had become its own organization, and it was training new teachers.
Cool.
So I was like, that's it. I jumped into the opportunity. I took that training. And then from there, I started my career as a leadership coach and a trainer.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. It's a powerful one. So because I hear this a lot from especially women who are at that age where they're they're corporate professionals who have built a really successful career and are told that you can have it all, and then you get to this point where the same time when you're supposed to be raising kids is the same kind of point in your career where you're like climbing that ladder and then having to make a choice that it's seemingly so difficult in that moment. So between when you decided to leave Google and then when you decided to become a consultant, what was kind of that time frame where you kind of went on this journey and found what you were going to do next?
When I left Google, it was a really hard decision because my identity was tied to it. I felt that I had invested all this time and energy and money and to get my education, right? To get to this point. So it was hard to leave. And for me, I knew it was the right choice at that moment. And it took a lot of different signs for me to make that move, right? And I
Mhm.
to get into it, but it was like I wasn't in the right role. And there was a lot of things happening at Google that kind of um, helped make that decision more obvious for me.
Mhm.
And I wanted to be with my kids. And they are a little bit also of the excuse that I needed to leave corporate, because I had been feeling for a while that that was not what I wanted to continue doing.
Mhm.
So I think that's an important aspect of it. And between when I left Google and when I opened my company, it was about 4 years.
Wow.
And during that time, for the first year or so, I wasn't even thinking about working. Thankfully, our family was in a financially stable enough position where it was okay for me to not to bring a salary. And I was able to give myself that time. And then when I did start thinking, okay, I'm ready to go back, because I do like to work. I missed it very much when I was with my kids. And again, I adore my kids. I love being with them. But for me personally, and everyone is different, I felt like I wanted to have also something in my life that was mine, that was not just like about the family, which is again not just. It's amazing. It's a lot. And for some people that's
Yeah.
where they thrive. But for me, I wanted something else. And so it took me a while to figure out. And I was paralyzed and stuck for a while. Every time people ask me, what was your big learning from making the career shift? And for me, my big learning is that step 2 is the enemy of step 1. Because when I was like, okay, I want to do this business, I was stuck because I felt like, again, I had to figure everything out, all the steps, instead of taking one step and another step and another step. That's how it kind of looked like for me.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I love what you said about step two is the enemy of step one, because it is that step one that like catalyzes the change and it catalyzes the transformation. Taking it one step at a time is how you make progress, how you make movement. So tell us more about Be Now Consulting. What is it and what do you do today?
Well, our company does leadership training and coaching. And really, my goal and our goal is to support individuals and organizations in achieving their best potential, in transforming the way that they live and they lead, so that they can be their best selves and also get the best out of the people around them. So the trainings are really based on emotional intelligence, and the goal is to improve the collaboration, the trust within teams, the culture of the organization. And then from a coaching standpoint, it's really to help people, figure out their blind spots, figure out the beliefs that they're having that are not helpful, and then change what's not working so they can be who they want to be, achieve what they want to achieve, make the difference in the world that they want to make.
So how has your approach changed over, the past 7 years?
When I started was really mostly with Search Inside Yourself, which was a training that I, had learned how to teach and I was delivering it. And then over time, I started developing my own programs based on all the different learnings from my life, the personal learnings, and also all the different trainings and courses that I've taken. And I also expanded to coaching, because even though at first I wasn't a coach, as I work with people in trainings, it's very natural that people will come and say, this is great. How can I continue working with you? Or how can I go deeper on this topic? So I got a certification in coaching as well. So it's been really fun to see the kind of how it evolves.
That's amazing. And now you're a speaker. So what do you hope to achieve with your speaking and your business?
Really the goal is to help people maybe realize things they haven't before, that will help them experience life in a way that is more fulfilling, more joyful, more effective.
Yeah. What are some of the facts and the stories in your career that really shaped it?
I'll give you a quick example from when I started my career, right? When I started this business, I was like 42 42. And that's a fact. I was 42 years old. The story in my mind is like, I'm way too old to start a business, right? And that story was not helpful for me at all. So and the way our brain works is that we find what we look for, right?
Yeah.
All I could find was that I couldn't find people that were my age that were starting business and thriving. I only saw people in my age that were having a very stable career, and then the young people starting new businesses. But when I was able to notice that, how true is that 42 is old to start a business? I mean, we are now living to 89 years old. So I was able to see that and then reframe my story, reframe in a way that was more empowering for me. Well, I'm 42, that means I have a lot of experience. So I'm starting, in a place much better than someone that's like 20 years old, have no career experience, no life experience. So just reframing that story for me made a big difference.
Wow, that is so powerful. And I think what's funny about that is that we glorify the college dropout who built $1 billion tech company, and we only hear about those stories. But most of the people who are starting businesses do have more experience, have seen, have had the notches on their belt and the experience to then go build something that the market really needs. So I loved that example. What advice do you have for leaders and managers who want to level up, who are growing in their careers, and maybe they're at a point where they're telling themselves certain facts, but there is a narrative that is not different from the fact that they're telling themselves?
Self-awareness is really a key leadership skill, and it's actually the first domain of emotional intelligence, and it's the basis for everything. So when we start having awareness about how some of these thoughts might be getting in the way of our development, of our growth, then we can start changing them. Because for most of us, and that's what's really interesting about this fact or story thing, we don't realize that our story is a story. We believe that's the truth about the world. And it's not until we kind of step back and look at it and question, how true is that? Because anything can be true. The most opposite things can be true, and they usually are true. That's why we are very paradoxical, And so we choose a lens, and then we get stuck to that lens, and that sometimes is for our own benefit, but often it's not. Those are limiting beliefs that gets us stuck. So, going back to your question, starts with self-awareness. People can develop that by journaling, by, taking time for reflection, by working with a coach, by having a mentor, because it's very easy to get sucked up by the day-to-day tasks and not stop and reflect and see how, I can up level as a leader, as a human being.
Yeah, I love what you said. Self-awareness is like the starting point. What role does passion or purpose play in building a successful career?
I think that it's really important to feel like you have purpose and passion. And I think there's a caveat to that, because this can also get people stuck when they feel like, I need to find my passion so I can follow that road. Because a lot of us, especially when we're younger, we don't know what our passion is. And it might feel very challenging to believe, I need to know what I'm passionate about so that I can go there. I think that sometimes the passion comes from the work. And I've experienced this. When you do work and you really put your whole self into it, you do your best, and you see the impact that you're having, how you're serving people, how you're serving the world, that brings passion in my experience, and that brings purpose. I think that's a key one for sure. Another thing that's important for me is the people I work with. In current role in my company, I don't have like as big as a team as I used to have when I worked for organizations, and I do miss that. But I do have a few people I work with. And of course, I love working with my clients. And so that feels like, the people I'm around. But I think it's really important to surround ourselves with people that we feel are adding, that we look up to, that we learn from. And I think in a career, like we spend so many of our hours at work. So being surrounded by people that we admire, that we enjoy is it's also really important for the fulfillment there.
Yeah, that's an important thing to talk about because as an entrepreneur, there are a lot of lonely moments. You're building in isolation. So how do you get that kind of create that community or the community of collaborators that you have around you? So how do you find those people?
Yeah. So I really make a concerned effort to be, sharing with other people. I have, from a few of the different trainings that I've taken in this career, we exchange experiences, we ask questions, answer questions either in person or through chat. So we're always supporting each other. I also am part of a group of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs from all over the US that we meet also on a monthly basis. I actually am meeting with them right after this call. So I try to keep, a cadence of engaging with people that we can, so that we can support each other. And when I can work in partnership with other professionals, I do that too, because I love developing content together and just brainstorming ideas and even delivering training together. I think that's really fun.
You build your own team, right? You build your own group of supporters. I love that. So looking back, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
So my advice would be to just trust life more. I think I was very cautious many times in my life. And, changing careers was a big risk for me. And I took it and it totally paid off. So I think I probably would have said that. Just kind of trust life, maybe take a little bit more risks because, life gets you every time.
Love it. Love it. If you had to sum up your career in 3 words, what would those be?
Growth, people, and service. I think those would be my three words.
That's beautiful. Tell me a little bit more.
So for me, I always like to feel like I'm growing in my role. Anytime that I felt I was stuck, I wanted to do something more, to find new projects, because that's what really motivates me, to feel like I'm always learning something new. People, as I said, for me, it's, I'm still friends and in touch with people from 3 jobs before, 4 jobs before. And it's all about the people in the end of the day, the relationships that you build and, those connections. And service, the real satisfaction from work comes from seeing how we are serving other people, how we are being productive, and how we are making a difference.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your career story, Barbara. I'm super excited for people to hear more about you and your work. Where can people find you?
Well, my website is benowconsulting.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. Those are the best places.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Barbara, for joining us on Career Slay.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
The Career Slay podcast is a co-production of Career Slay and Weld Reply. This episode was produced by Asia Lane and Michael Burke, with editing by Tyra Greer and Michael Burke. If you like the show, subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're ready to level up, pivot, or lead with confidence, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com.